Sahana Vavatu Sahano Vanatu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our studies be illumined. May we not unnecessarily argue or cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this evening, Tuesday evening, normally a talk, but since tomorrow is Imbolc and St. Bridget's anniversary or celebration, tomorrow we will, instead of having question and answer, we'll have a talk on the two things. We may venture into some of the subject this evening. So therefore, I'm going to block off my microphone briefly so that you can formulate any questions. If there are no questions, there are no answers.
Swamiji?
Yes.
Pranam, Swamiji, if you can explain a bit about Koshas.
Koshas. Do you mean kosha?
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay.
K or a G, I didn't know. Swamiji, Koshas.
Koshas, yes, kosha. All right. Wonderful. Supposing I am in a room and I have a bright lamp, a bright light, brightest light you've ever seen. And I decide that I'll put a small plastic filter over it. Let us say the filter is red. And somebody unsuspectingly, not knowing what the trick was, will come into a room and wonder what a beautiful red light is glowing. And then supposing they leave, and before the next person enters the room, I put a yellow filter on. Now I have a different color, different variation of color. And an unsuspecting person will come in and say, oh, what a wonderful orange glow you have. Like that, I can put 4 or 5 filters on the original light. And the last one will be brown, let us say, will be so dark. You'll just see the radiation, the glow of the original light flowing through. But you may, in your ignorance, think that the light is, its nature is brown and casts a brown shadow everywhere. So this is a wonderful analogy, really, to explain the concept of kosha. We think that we have only one body, but according to the Tattari Upanishad, we have a number of different bodies. And this is a useful thing. It's a useful concept because these bodies are not really solid, not as solid as you think. Not even the physical body that you have is as solid as you think. And while it's extremely complex, extraordinarily complex, and generally robust, robust means it is designed not to fall ill. According to naturopathy, illness means that somehow the body was subject to wrong thinking or wrong behavior, wrong eating, wrong exercise, no exercise. And then, of course, environmental factors are there. Long ago, the germ theory was prevalent. Everybody thought we'd catch germs. But of course, you and I may be sitting here, we'll be breathing in the same germs. One person falls sick, the other one doesn't. Why is that? One has more of an inner resistance. Maybe they have a better way of thinking. Maybe they have a better lifestyle. Maybe they exercise more. Maybe they keep the body as free from toxic material as possible. And so this human body is very, very robust. It knows what to do. And yet, with one stroke, your head can fall off. People in battle, you'll find, one stroke. Or a car accident, one stroke, body is gone. So while it's very robust and very complex, it's also very vulnerable and fragile. And it is seen to be something like a material manifestation of something else. And the question that is always asked, what is life? Some people reduce it to another question, similar question, to say, what is that energetic impulse that distinguishes a living person from a dead corpse? And this question, what is life, is a question that has gone throughout the whole of humanity for thousands of years. And in recent times, great minds like Schrödinger have, in 1938 lectures in Dublin, the Royal Society, has tried to explore this question, not being satisfied with mere physics, a pioneer of quantum physics, but exploring the areas of biology and other things, and comes to one conclusion among others. Consciousness can only be one. It cannot be multiple, and he uses various arguments for it. So when we say we fall unconscious, he says with various arguments, no. And when we explore the understanding of consciousness, we're now in the area of another layer, not an energetic level, but something more subtle and something that can be observed. Because we can sit down and we can observe right now all the activity going on in the mind. Instead of being tied up with it, if we are able to stand back and observe it. In the preceding meditation, this is something that we were doing. We were behaving like a witness, watching all the passenger travel, all the trains going back and forth, like being on a metro station somewhere, and seeing all the flow of legs and arms moving, all intent on their business, trains shuttling back and forth, people talking. Nowadays, people looking at their phones and what have you, doing thumb exercises and so on. All of that is taking place. But clearly, I am in a position of being able to observe this. The 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is a very, very useful chapter. It gives us two aspects of perception. It says that for anybody to perceive anything, two things must be there, a perceiver and the object perceived. And clearly, the perceiver cannot be in any way tied up with the object. And so we can observe the gross elements, the objects in front of us, people, places, events, scenes, relationships, the sun rising, the sun setting, the inner world or the inner domestic world of concerns. But we can also see our reactions. We can also see the mental field. So all of these that I'm describing are called koshas. Kosha literally is a sheath. Let's say, select another image. You must have seen Russian dolls, one inside the other. You take the one off, it's not the end of it. Another smaller version inside, you take it off. So the Taittiriya Upanishad tells us, look, there are 5 sheaths. And what is the practical use of it? When we know it, we can use it in a meditation. We can go inward to more and more subtle, more and more expansive, and more truthful areas, as it were, until finally we come across a datum and we cannot go beyond it. There's a final datum. There's a subject, pure being. And this by its very nature must be absolute. Now in the Sankhya system, all these ultimate observers were called Purushas, and as many people as there are, that many Purushas. But they were generous enough to put the whole of existence, relative existence, into one package and call it Prakriti, nature. They didn't have enough generosity to put all the Purushas into one bundle and say one Purusha. Why not? Because you see, if it's all one, if you get enlightened, we all get enlightened. If you fall into a pit, we all fall into a pit. If you get elevated, we all get elevated. And that's clearly not happening. With a misunderstanding. Because we are not a layer. We're not an individual. And if we are by nature steady, unchanging, undivided, infinite, albeit invisible, invisible infinite, then we are the seer and we cannot be seen. We are the knower and we cannot be known. We are the witness, we cannot ourselves be witnessed. And in another talk I gave some time ago, I was mentioned this wonderful text of Drishya Viveka, where we are able to progressively go back with each field representing a multiplicity into more and more subtle areas, like taking off one Russian doll, another one, another one, another one. So we have to distinguish two terms, Jiva and Atman, or yogic language Purusha. And in this distinction, we can see, well, what is Jiva? Jiva literally means the life. What is life? Jiva, a living entity, seeming to be individual. Swami Vivekananda has a wonderful definition for Ishvara, or God, and for the soul. What is it? Well, imagine a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere. This is called Ishvara, or God. Imagine a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is in one particular place. So this is called the Jiva. And that means, therefore, that when one layer goes, you have more layers to go. So the Jiva is everything minus the human body. And this is the key to what we call transmigration. You can say reincarnation also, but it's a much better term to say transmigration. Something seems, see the language, seems to migrate somewhere and move on and progress toward a goal somewhere. And all of us have an inner urge to do it. We all have an inner urge to drive toward the expression of perfection. Why is that? It's because our very nature must be perfect. Our very nature is the infinite invisible. Our very nature, therefore, is like a seed that potentially grows and develops. Like you cannot get an oak tree, for example, without a seed, but the full oak tree has to be within the seed. And so the seed must be involved in the evolution of the tree. And as I point out so many times, I point out again, the term evolution etymologically means unfolding. It's a kind of trap if you think something new is created. And we were discussing with a devotee here, I say controversially, I can't believe in evolution. What? Everybody believes in evolution. It's a wonderful modern theory. No. Why I don't believe in evolution is I believe in totality. Something that is total doesn't evolve or change. It only looks like that. And two great examples I normally give. Just poking a little fun. I gave it earlier, forgive my repetition. So several frogs, they go to examine the nature of a cone. You know, a cone is an object and can be studied. And don't ask me why frogs can be scientists. You just accept the story. It's a story. Maybe even just to emphasize the point, we'll say once upon a time, there were several frogs who were interested to explore what is the nature of a cone. And naturally, they're in water, swimming things. But somehow, they managed to keep inside the water and at the same time hold stopwatches and pencils and pens and so on and so forth, maybe waterproof charts where they can examine the nature of a cone. And a professor takes a cone and lowers it into the water, and the first thing they see, waiting, anticipating for the birth of Mr. Cone, is a point. And they write down, congratulations, whoever gave birth to this point. But at 6 o'clock this morning, Mr. Cone was born as a point. And as we wait a little bit more, we see that the infant seed, the infant point, has now evolved and grown into a small child, a small baby of a circle. And why a circle? Because these frogs are dimensionally deficient. They can't look up, they can't look down. They are vertically challenged, is a polite way of saying it. You don't say short people. Oh, I just said it. You say vertically challenged. Okay, all right. So these frogs will only see that this little point, which cannot be measured, is now evolved into something with a circumference, and they measure it diligently because they're scientists. And as time goes on, it develops more and more and more into a pot-belly thing, like a rich person. And finally, the cone gets dropped in the water. We regret to announce 6 o'clock in the evening, exactly 12 hours later, poor Mr. Cone died. What a pity. We'll have a funeral, and then we'll have a discussion, where will Mr. Cone reincarnate? Well, the fact of it, it was never born, it never grew and developed, and it won't die. It won't, because it's a totality. Nobody ever saw the whole thing. And so a great scientist called David Bohm, who studied also with Krishnamurti, was under the opinion, we'll solve all our problems if we view the universe holistically. Take a holistic approach, try to catch a glimpse of the totality. And so this totality is there, expressed in layers. One example I gave was filters on a light. When you remove each filter one after one after one after one, you get to the pure white light, which was originally there. And the stage where the first filter is there, this is called Savikalpa Samadhi. Savikalpa Samadhi, where you almost see the light, but don't merge in it. You retain your individuality, and you see there the effects of all the other filters. So these are like koshas, like sheaths. And you have to understand for two reasons. One, to get a better understanding of the nature of a human. And what applies to a human applies everywhere to every living organism. Secondly, for meditation purposes, where you can retreat one by one. Physical body, next energetic body, pranamaya kosha. The first is anamaya kosha. What does it mean? It's just made from yesterday's porridge. That's all. And it appears today. Yesterday's banana and milk, or yesterday's porridge, or yesterday's pizza, whatever it was. And then the energetic body, pranamaya kosha, that means that energetic, that life component, that aspect of the universe that localized as a kind of whirlpool in one localized area. And it shines through as if it energizes the body. You must have noticed the difference between a living body and a corpse. There's a great deal of difference. You can poke it and it's not there. But what distinguishes something that is living, something like a spider and its web. You can poke the web and it'll bounce, but it won't react any other way. In the meantime, the living element of it, the conscious, intelligent entity, is called a spider, and it will run away. Sometimes it may attack you, I don't know, but it'll move anyway. It reacts. So what we call life is something that reacts, something that reproduces, something that reacts. Now, every living thing does it. It's just that it's too subtle to notice. The atomic level does it. We just don't notice it. And we're puzzled by it. But it knows its environment. Where does its knowledge come from? A deeper area. Let's go beyond the pranamaya kosha. What is activating this? What is giving this life? Manomaya kosha, made from mind. Then more subtle area, and we can observe it. And what is more subtle than that? Then we have something called the intellect. And the intellect is there, making decisions, having executive, but all it is another filter. And it's the final filter. So it looks like the intelligent entity rather than an instrument. And then bliss, Anandamaya Kosha is there. We experience this Anandamaya Kosha when we take all the other layers away, and we call this deep sleep. And deep sleep is blissful. The layer of bliss remains. And then as our consciousness enters back into it, all the other layers get activated, and we can broadly categorize it in three ways. We can say it's the waking. The waking area has all the elements of consciousness and intelligence, and all the koshas or the sheaths are operating, including the physical sheath. But then in dream, well, the physical sheath is not exactly as we had it. Some other entity crosses without a visa or passport into the dream world and somehow plays football when the leg is amputated in the waking state. Supposing I get into an accident and I get into a hospital and somebody cuts the leg off and puts it in a bucket and I say goodbye to it. There's the end of my football career. Well, in a dream, fully legged, I can play football and score goals. So how was it that the leg came back? How is it that it reincarnated in a dream? A different state of consciousness. Just, oh. Okay. Okay, good. Yes. So somebody is whistling, and then we've discovered it's one of the devotees' phones here. That's right. Very good. So anyway, wonderful interlude of a tune, super good. The whistling component or the voice is in Anamaya Kosha, activated by Pranamaya Kosha, designed and directed by Manomaya Kosha. And the decision to use it or turn it off is the intellect, and the entity that sits there contentedly in peaceful state in a dreamless sleep is called Anandamaya Kosha. And then there is the real self, Atman, the light as it stands by itself, unfiltered, with no other layers. Where did these layers come from is the question then. How did they appear? Well, they appear and they disappear, which gives us a clue. And earlier on in the meditation, all these layers were delineated as kind of oscillations or waves with frequencies and amplitudes and all the rest of it. But the central life-giving force, the perceiver itself, is perceiving all the objects of perception, the field in front. This is the 13th chapter. Kshetran Kshetrajna, the knower of the field and the fields. And the fields consist of a number of different things. What are those things? And now we come back to tattvas. Tattvas are categories of things that we derive from the Samkhya system. 24 categories, says the Samkhya. What are they? You see, at the Anamaya Kosha level that dominates, well, the world of perception in front of us that gives us problems. The objects are there, 5 of them, 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of reaction, and the mind. A localized branch of us, of a cosmic mind. 16 in all. And then there are 5, these are expressions and combinations of 5 subtle elements called tanmatras, and all egos, all senses of individualities, another 6. And then we come to cosmic mind. All of this comes from cosmic mind. And from cosmic mind, that comes from what we categorize as nature, That is God. Nature, Ishvara, God is the same thing. No dualistic system. It is not a God creator creating all of this, manifesting as it. So where do we get the relative world from? How do we get from the absolute to the relative? How do we get from being to becoming is a scratching head moment. How does it happen? So I'll repeat a lot of what I normally say. So we understand that there are two types of causation. One we call parinama, transformational causation, nothing new happens. And evolution is this kind of causation. And I often use the example, if I take a piece of paper, I fold it, then I unfold it, nothing new happened. It's the same totality. But when we look at the holistic version of it, the totality, nothing is changing. It only looks as if it's changing. And the frogs in the example assumed there was change because they were dimensionally deficient. And we also are restricted in our reading and our interpretation of the world in front. We only have 5 photographs of the universe. That's all. And beyond that, we don't know. Instruments may give us some insight. All the pictures and photographs from the James Webb telescope and all of that are all in the infrared so that we can see things clearly. The eye cannot see it. The eye cannot catch it. So every creature that has organs, we take the organs to be interpretive faculties in order to read our environment, in order to make sense of it, in order to play the game of life, and in order to react in a suitable way that will have our own inner transformation in it. So there's a transformational causation subject to the laws of conservation, that nothing new is added. Some total of mass is neither created nor destroyed. Same thing with energy. These conservation laws are there. Violated to some extent, and in some cases, we won't go into that. Generally, in the deterministic universe, it's there. Now, a seed evolves into a tree because the seed is involved in the tree, in the evolution of the tree. What we find as tree is manifested seed. In the same way, this whole relative world will come from the absolute. And the absolute then goes from being to becoming by a different kind of causation. And this is called vivarta, apparitional causation. It looks as if it is trees and flowers and this and that and the other. Yes, that's our interpretation, that's our reading of it. We can't make any sense of it otherwise. Nobody can make sense of waves. And for practical purposes, we need to relate to how we interpret the world. You ask a carpenter, please make a table. And then he says, okay, what dimensions? Don't worry about the dimensions. It's all atoms. It's all, the quantum mechanics. It's all, it's all waves and so on and so forth. Well, that's of no use. The wood is solid and you take it as solid and you give the proper dimensions and you work out what is the assembly time and delivery time. Whatever he tells you, you double, because that's normally how it works. So we can be practical by living in the relative world on the one hand and playing the game of life. Once we know and understand it, we can do it. That means life no longer becomes threatening. That means we don't have any fear. And a question in text will go something like this. How can we increase our faith and practice? Well, first of all, we have to understand what we mean by faith and what we mean by practice. What is faith? Well, what is the opposite of faith is fear. And fear is a kind of faith in heredity, a faith in our genetic makeup, the XY chromosomes on each side, a faith in this world. It equates to doubt. Doubt leads to fear. Fear leads to uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to a way of dealing with the world which is partly ad hoc, partly to do with the future planning, and partly to do with historical doubt and regret. So, what do we mean by faith? By faith, we mean the absolute certainty, and a growing certainty, no doubt, that all resources are taken care of, that God is not a bad investor. The fact that you are living, even with these koshas, the fact that you're living means that there is a plan for you. Why is it that the Lord digests your food, pumps your heart, gives you talents and abilities? Because He has a purpose for you. That has to be endorsed. So what do we mean by faith in Vedanta? By faith, we mean the unwavering faith in your fundamental self. Your fundamental self is unchanging, infinite, and right up front in a conversation on all these subjects, philosophical conversation, Krishna and Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Right up front, this is Krishna's message. The most wonderful psychologist ever. You'll notice that Arjuna was suffering from lack of faith in himself, lack of faith in the universe, lack of faith in the scenes and circumstances in which he finds himself. And so, and lack of faith in his military abilities. And so his solution is fear or withdrawal. Same thing. Using a technique either of confronting or withdrawing or yielding, he chose to withdraw. And so we would expect a good psychologist to say, my dear Arjun, please lie down, because you see, the Lord of the universe can magically produce a couch. Please lie down on this couch. Wait for it. I'll take a notebook out with a pen. Tell me all about your childhood. Tell me how all the Kauravas were mean to you, how they nearly destroyed you, how they led you away, how they forced you to go incognito away from kingdoms, how they almost trod on you and almost eliminated you completely out of jealousy. Tell me all of this, and that is why you're fearful now. Explore the field of the past until you identify that area in your childhood that has come through to you in the unconscious mind as samskaras and is causing you all this current difficulty. And magically, once we've identified it, it'll go away. But Krishna doesn't do this. He says, where has this cowardice come from? His message is a message of strength. And he says, your very inborn nature, your skills and talents and abilities say that you should fight. Now, when we say fight, all of us have to do it. All of us have to struggle and fight. But it's not of a violent kind necessarily. It's like training a horse. You can whip it if you like. It won't like you. Or you can coax it. You can approach it from the side. Don't look at it in the eyes. Stretch your hand out. Let it sniff and smell your hand a little bit. Lick it a little bit. Get to know you. It'll be suspiciously watching you out of the corner of its eye. You'll be looking somewhere else. And allow your hand then to wander behind the ear and then stroke a little bit. And then wait for it to turn around and lick you some more and so on. Now you've made friends with it. So the mind has to be disciplined. It is the mind that is the difficulty. So we have to have faith in ourselves that we have the capacity to do it. And the Kathopanishad and the Bhagavad Gita, both they use this example of a chariot. You are the charioteer. And the intellect is the chariot driver, and the mind are the reins. Now you have several of these koshas. And then the senses are the horses. And if left to themselves and not controlled, well, they'll go in all kinds of different independent directions and cause havoc and probably overturn your chariot. So you don't get into a car, never mind a Tesla car, you don't get into a manually operated car and say, okay, I'm sitting here, please do what you want. This is characterized by a characteristic of laziness and inertia, but nor do you wildly drive it without any rules on the road and cease to correct it. And when it's going off in one direction, you allow it and you'll fall into a ditch. The secret of driving a car is every minor movement, every minor inclination toward the left is adjusted toward the right. And because we are the driver, independent driver, not the car, we can operate it well and select the road we want. Now we're in charge. We are not a slave of the mind. So the mind, we have to make our own slave. We have to master the mind. And this requires, of course, regularity. What is practice? Practice is repetition. Repetition of the same things. Repetition of the healthy habits. Repetition filling the mind with noble virtues, sattva. Principally love. Putting that there. And applying a practical Vedanta philosophy that says, not only is the Atman in me immortal, and not only therefore do I have faith in this, as Krishna tells, see, water cannot wet it, fire cannot burn it, wind cannot dry it, it doesn't change, it's changeless. In another section in the Upanishad, comparing the body to a city, 11-gated city, belonging to one who is ajna, unborn, and one whose consciousness is unflickering. That we have to assert. We assert it through scripture. We assert it because the teachers tell us. And we then assert it for ourselves. As soon as we know that we are able to observe these koshas, then we know I'm not the kosha. As soon as we say, I'm watching the body, the inference straight away, I'm not the body. As soon as we shift gears in a car, it also occurs to us, I'm not the gears. As soon as we get into the car and close the door, we know I'm not the car. And therefore I can drive it, I can master it. The conviction, therefore, I'm not the body, has to be engendered, has to be cultivated. I'm not the body. I'm not the energetic aspect of it. I'm not the mind. I'm not the intellect. I'm not even the thing that remains when all of that is gone and experienced in a blissful, dreamless sleep. I am that which knows it. I'm the knower, I'm the thinker, I'm the witness. And then we have to see that in others. So the one simple formula, see the God in everyone. See the God in all. Increase your faith not only in yourself, but increase your faith in the presence, the divine presence that is all around you. It's called practicing the presence. So when you say practice, I can extend the phrase, practicing the divine presence here and now. As you walk, know that the divine, however you view it, let us say divine mother, let us say divine father, let us say companion, friend, playmate, whatever it is walking with me. And every step belongs to that infinite that expresses its energy. So make no mistake, these koshas are not independent of the manifesting aspect. These are manifested varieties. When you take that, and when you apply time and space, and motion and causality and functionality, then you have the relative world. So being to becoming requires this kind of causation that is called apparitional causation. And apparitional causation is caused by seeing things in a fragmented way through the mind. The mind becomes a fragmenter. What is this world in front of us? Fragmented God, seemingly fragmented God. Recognize it, and then you adopt a different point of view. You can use one or two techniques that we might call practice. One technique will be to, with your creative imagination, see that divine dressed up as every person, as every scene, like seeing people on a stage or in a film. We really know, if we examine it correctly, that these are actors with makeup, that these are in front of a director who's saying cut or who's saying action. And in the old movies, where there's a beautiful, people are in front of rocks and there's a beautiful scene with mountains in the background, nowadays it's pretty obvious that these are painted scenes. Nowadays it's a bit more realistic. They put things people in a proper location. It's not so easy to trick the eye now. In the old days, you're going in a car, and there's a film of scenery going on in the background, and bouncing a few springs, bouncing the car, and so on and so forth. We get sucked into it. We get emotionally involved in it, so that when somebody dies in the scene, we weep. When there's a tragedy, we weep. And when there's a comedy, we laugh. We take it as a reality. In the same way, we take the relative world as a reality, but when we look at it closely, when we examine it with viveka, with discernment, we see it becomes flaky and there's no real substance to it. The substance lies behind it. That is the pure being. That is the absolute. And you cannot have the two commensurate with each other. You cannot have the two operating together. When you're in the absolute, the relative's gone. It disappears. And when you're in the relative world, the absolute is in the distance as a substratum. It is really to get closer to that absolute by doing two things. By understanding the nature of the relative world, the changing nature of it, the temporal nature of it, and that the only thing that is giving it life is the absolute. So learning to see behind the masks there, we do the Enneagram, it's to do with the masks, seeing behind the mask and getting to the God within, and then worshipping the God there. No matter how it looks or behaves toward you, seeing that's the one aspect. Another one would be a slightly different one that has the enrichment of worship and doing all actions for the sake of the beloved Lord, who's dressed up in all these different forms. Another approach will be to feel that divine grace is flowing through every part of the relative world, every limb, every hand, every arm, every eye, every foot, every leg, including this one, including the one that we somehow call me. So to practice doing that, to see it's like a wind, the wind of divine grace flowing through and activating all these parts. Now you can also alternate between these two positions, of course. In this way, we get rid of ego. When I say ego, I mean egoism. Egoism, what is it? It is the mix-up between the seer and the seen, the perceiver and the perceived, the known and the knower. So that discernment, that is called viveka. And the people who practiced jnana yoga in the ancient days, the rishis, that was their technique. The purely practice for them was the practice of discernment. In every part, in every approach, in every yoga, this discernment has to be used in different ways. In bhakti yoga, it happens automatically. In bhakti yoga, the love for one entity means that you lose the love for all the others. All the little loves are replaced by one central love. And that central love then is all that's enough. You don't require anything more. There's no tapasya in this system, so to speak. Tapasya strengthening the will, because the attraction to one entity means that all the relative loves fall away. People ask, how do you overcome addictions? You overcome addiction by replacing it with another better addiction, a healthy addiction. And so religion tells us, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, strength, and so on, all thy whole being. This is a universal precept in the world of devotion, in the world of bhakti yoga. And Jesus adds something, of course, it was there already. Love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because there's only one thing there. It's a holistic universe. There's a totality. Your neighbor is yourself, like that. So these various paths are indicated, and each person will follow their own path, which may shift and change as time and life goes on. So we increase our faith and practice by increasing practice. See, how do we increase our skill at playing tennis? Well, we practice every day, and we make sure that the tennis game is, we are not repeating the things we know. We repeat the things that are new to us and that we don't know. We use it as a kind of adventure. With a sporting attitude, we can do it. But regularity is necessary. So there has to be, first of all, the motivation and enthusiasm for it. And that comes from feeling. Ramakrishna tells us clearly, you weep for God for 3 days, you'll get your vision. And so he knows the value of yearning heart. And we have the example in human relations. In human relations, there's a yearning there. We duplicate this yearning. And it's just the yearning that yields everything. We can do it progressively, step by step, and do it with an element of dedication. Never mind about the downs in it. Never mind whether we succeed or fail or any of these kinds of things. That's beside the point. In tennis, we have to fail. We won't learn if we don't fail. That's the fact of it. But next time we'll do better. Next time better, next time better, next time better, until we get this improvement. Same thing, learning to play a musical instrument. There's one son of some devotees, he was doing a concert. And you can see laboriously the notes being played in the way the teacher has taught him. There's a wonderful motivational speaker. He's a musician, he's a conductor, Jewish man. And he tells about when you first learn music, you see, you plod along doing the right notes. And then as you progress, the timing changes somehow. And then it becomes a little different, but still it's a kind of mechanical prodding thing until eventually there's no plodding. The head doesn't move like this. There seems to be a flow. It seems to be continuous. Now you've got the spirit of the music. And so it's important that we're able to motivate ourselves with feeling. And so regularity in when we sit for meditation. That's important. We have to work out what kind of, what is the nearest we can have to a regular practice. And it's not about the amount of time you spend. It's about the same time, if you can, on a daily basis. And it's about the quality, not the quantity of what you do. It's about inserting true feeling into it. It's about being absorbed. It's about listening. What is prayer? Prayer is listening. It's listening to the inner still voice of the divine. It's nothing to do with talking. And so these are some comments on this. I hope it's given a little direction. The whole question of being and becoming, because it is here as well, it was made a comment of involution and evolution. Swami Vivekananda gives a whole discourse on this evolution and involution. And he says, you see, And of course, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we also find it. Good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. And the example would be to, if you have a body of water, it will naturally flow. This is what we could call the flow theory of evolution. And the example will be a farmer bringing water to his fields. And so there are various channels which are there, which is dug, but there's a reservoir of water behind it. And what is stopping this? Well, you have gates stopping it. You remove the gates and it flows through. I like a much grander example. And I have given it before, I'll give it again because I come from Zimbabwe. We have, I think it still retains the record of the largest man-made dam in the world, holding the vastest amount of water. The whole valley has been flooded. Now you see, at some point or other, you have to open the floodgates. You can't think that to get the water from the vast body, the vast lake, to the other side of the dam wall, that you can take a teaspoon every day and put a little bit on the other side. It won't work. You can use a bucket also, it won't work. You can use a pump, it won't work. The amount of water is too vast. The easiest way is open the floodgates. The water will flow through by itself. And so Swami Vivekananda, in his commentary on this, says this is a much better explanation from the yogis than the modern theories of evolution. And so we can see that what we call biological evolution, well, at some stage or other, something jumped out of the bacteria. Let's bring it up to the reptiles. Something jumped out of them, the mammals. And out of the mammals, apes were there. And what jumped out of the apes was man. And what jumps out of man will be God. You can view it in this way. Once each obstacle is taken off, the natural flow leads you to the next level. And leads you to the next level, leads you to the next level. So this is what we might call the flow theory of evolution that has all the characteristics of what we'd expect in evolution. We have variation. You can imagine our river constantly flowing. It'll get caught up here and there, but eventually we'll move on because water will always find a way around. Anybody who has a leak in their house knows this thoroughly. You can block it here, it appears somewhere else. Water will find the easiest route, but it will always find a way. So this thing that we call the divine is there, surging forward to find its own perfection and merge with the cosmic ocean. But it's water nonetheless. Water is water. The water that started in the mouth, or as a small melting point in the Himalayas, as Himalayan snow, and moved as a spring, and then as a stream, and then as a river, and then as a vast surging river, and moving toward the sea. It's the same water. It's all H2O. It's all 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part of oxygen. Water is water. But it takes different forms, no doubt. We have to acknowledge the different forms in it. And naturally, the water will be held up in some places, move on in other places, form eddies, form currents, form waves. But these are just names and forms. And the substance is water, and that's the absolute. So that means nothing changes. It is still there. It just looks as if it's changing under conditions of time and space and causation, and all the various factors and constants that we put into nature, all the things that make a regularity, a kind of rhythm, a kind of divine design inserted, not just for nature as such, but also for the individual. You are an individual, highly valued. There's a purpose for your life, and God is sustaining your life, every single cell of it, because He has a higher purpose for you. And the highest purpose of all for all of us is to manifest our own freedom, our inherent freedom that is already there. We just have to take off the obstacles. And these are called kleshas. Patanjali calls them, puts 5 of them for us. But the mother of all of them would be ignorance. We can't remove ignorance in one go. We have to remove the subsidiary components. We remove attraction and repulsion, pain and pleasure. We stop swinging between good and bad, between pleasant and preferable, between the things that we like against the things we dislike, against the things that gives us pleasure as opposed to the things that give us fear. And playing a game like that doesn't work. It will always be a syndrome going on endlessly. We have to find out what is the cause of it. The cause of it is my mix-up between the seer and the seen that we call egoism. The final datum being mixed up with all these different koshas and making a compound of it called I. And once that's gone, then we have to we have a better chance of removing the overall ignorance which is there, and the only antidote to ignorance is knowledge. Not an intellectual knowledge, but awakening knowledge, a realization, a revelation, a realization. Vivekananda gives a definition: religion is realization. So I think we are 3 minutes away from the end. So I may take any further questions if you like. So I think I explained the koshas. Are you satisfied with that?
Yes, Swamiji. Thank you.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
We talk of Om as
Yes.
the cause. We talk of causation of Om.
Yes, yes. Well, Om is an expression. Okay, so it's caused by a movement, because this universe doesn't work unless there's a movement somewhere. And if 3 components are sitting in equilibrium, then nothing goes anywhere. There has to be a ruffling somewhere for this universe to exist. That ruffling is called Om. Yeah. Or it's called the pranava. So there has to be that movement, and that movement is a vibratory movement, the author of all sounds. And the yogis will hear it, and we were discussing it earlier, the yogis will hear it not as we pronounce it. They'll hear it in reality as the subtle vibration sound that the yogi's ear can hear. And it is, in a sense, a bija mantra. It's a seed mantra for the whole of existence. It's from where the whole of existence comes in its variation. The expression of the cosmic mind. In mythology, it is Saraswati. In mythology, it is Vak. In the Vedas, it's Vak. It's from Brahma comes Vak, the word. Just like John's Gospel. In the beginning was the word.
It's the absolute is. Does it begin in the absolute? The absolute above.
Well, we can put it diagrammatically like that, yes, if we want some kind of structure, see.
Yeah.
But can you imagine the absolute? See, take away space, take away time, what have you got?
And take away causation.
Yeah, well, you see, in a deep sleep, we take away time, space, and causation, but that's not the absolute. That's absolute darkness.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but
we
the one,
can't imagine the,
exactly.
the absolute.
Yes.
No.
So imagination, image making means creating some kind of form symbol and making an objective thing. And that's good in the sense that if you cannot imagine it, you have to represent it. All mathematics is a representational language of something that we have, largely speaking, no concept of. Okay. So instead of see, what is gravity? Well, we experience the effects of it, but how do you express it? You put it as a g in an equation. That's all.
So it's beyond
Beyond our comprehension. Yes, naturally. Yeah. So we bring it within our range. And so, what is God? God is the highest reading to the human mind of the Absolute. And of course, diving into the Absolute for most people is like the salt doll that disappears and dissolves into the ocean, and that's it. It's finished. Yeah. And so there are some people, there's Ramakrishna's example. There's a wall that 4 friends discover. Yeah. And there's obviously something delightful happening on the other side. So one person climbs and sees, oh, everyone is blissfully playing and there's dancing and whatever. He goes and joins the divine party. And each one of them goes and does the same, gets attracted to it and moves toward it. But you see, then if all of them do it, there's nobody left behind to tell the others. So one of them should at least stay behind and say, oh, there's something delightful going on behind the wall. Come and see. So these are the messengers. These are the angels. These are the prophets. These are the incarnations. These are the enlightened ones who say, rather than me going into it, let me tell the others and be a gentleman about it. After you, please. After you, please. After you, please. You first. Me last. Good. Okay. All right.